my dear learners. Welcome to the world of exploration. Welcome to the world of learning. This is Sukriti Joshi, and you have stepped into the right destination. That is English Gurukul. So you have come on the right destination, your own school, that is school of thought, that is English Gurukul, right? So today I'm going to cover metaphysical poets, right? So basically, when we talk about metaphysical poets, the term metaphysical is loosely applied to a group of 17th century poets, right? Such as John Donne being one of them. In fact, having a lot of importance in metaphysical poetry, right? Then Andrew Marvell, then Henry Vaughan, then George Herbert, and then Richard Crashaw, right? So these poets did not belong to a school of poetry. These poets did not belong to a school of poetry, right? But were united by common characteristics, but they were, connected because of because they were having common characteristics, because they were sharing some common traits, right? Such as trait of such as quality that of being wit, right? uh Inventiveness and a love of elaborate stylistic maneuvers, right? The poetry was rich in intellectual complexity, right? John Dryden was the first to use the term metaphysic. So, who was the first person to make use of this terminology? Which terminology are we talking about? We are talking about metaphysic. So, who was the first one? John Dryden was the first to use the term metaphysic in his criticism of Donne, right? In his discourse concerning satire, Dryden had stated that Donne in his poetry affects the metaphysics. In his amorous verses, where nature only should reign and perplex the minds of the fair sex with nice speculations of philosophy, when he should engage their hearts. While Dryden had used the term in reference to Donne, Samuel Johnson extended it to a group of poets, right? So Dryden had used this term in reference to Donne. You can remember by D association method. Dryden, John Dryden, D, it starts with D, Dryden, and Donne also starts with D. So basically, he had used this term in reference to Donne. But who actually made it like a collection? It was Samuel Johnson, uh, who extended it to a group of poets. So Samuel Johnson extended it to a group of poets, right? All right. So in the Lives of Poets, Johnson stated that about the beginning of the 17th century appeared a race of writers that may be termed as the metaphysical poets. Both Dryden and Johnson had used the term metaphysical in a negative sense. So both Dryden and Johnson, when we talk about John Dryden and when we talk about Johnson, they had used metaphysical this terminology in a negative sense to criticize the excess of this group of poets. Johnson believed that metaphysical poets not only wanted to show their learning, so they believe that metaphysical poets wanted to show off, sort of show off, wanted to showcase their learning. They wanted to portray how learned they are, how learned they were, right? So we are talking about that they used to show off, right? Sort of a thing. So they used to believe that metaphysical poets not only wanted to show their learning in their poetry, the most heterogeneous ideas were yoked together with violence, right? So the most heterogeneous ideas, when you talk about the heterogeneity, when we talk about the heterogeneous ideas, they were, they were yoked together with violence. Yeah, you heard it right. All right, so common features of metaphysical poetry. Let's quickly discuss the the common features of metaphysical poetry. What are the common features of metaphysical poetry? Now, metaphysical poetry is characterized by subtle and complex concentrated thought. It is intellectually rigorous, right? It employs bold and ingenious conceits, also called metaphysical conceits. Johnson called it a combination of dissimilar images. So when we are saying it employs bold and ingenious conceits, also called metaphysical conceits. So ingenious conceits were also known as metaphysical conceits, right? Now, Johnson called it a combination of this is Johnson. Remember that. So we are talking about Johnson over here. Do not get confused with, do not get perplexed, or, do not get confused between Dunn, Johnson, and Dryden. We are talking about who? We are talking about Johnson. Johnson called it a combination of dissimilar images. Example, in his poem, A Valediction Forbidding Mourning, a very famous poem of his. So um, we are talking about a valediction forbidding mourning. Donne compares the two lovers to a compass. So herein in this poem, what do we get to see is that how Donne, when we talk about Donne, how Donne as a poet is comparing two lovers, right? Um, to a to a compass. So you must have seen compass, right? Even in like we have compass in our mobile phones as well, whether it be Redmi or iPhone. You do have compass in Redmi. I have Redmi, so I'll talk about Redmi. So in Redmi also there's a compass. Otherwise also you must have seen the compass. So herein we are talking about that how the two lovers, he sort of compared two lovers with that of compass, because in compass also earlier, if you have seen the image, or if you have seen the compass, you must have seen uh the different directions, the angles, and the north, south, east, west, right? And the thing pointing towards it. So, right? So we are talking about that in this poem. Which poem? A Valediction Forbidding Mourning, right? All right. So if they be two, they are so as stiff twin compasses are two. So herein these lines are also profound in nature. Why am I saying profound? Because see, if they be two, wherein we are talking about the lovers. So if they be two, if we are talking about the two lovers out over here, they are so as stiff. So they are also stiff like the two compasses, as stiff twin compasses are two. So it's sort of twin compasses are two. So that's that close, right? The soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do, right? So these are some of the lines from the poem. The soul, not the soul, thy soul. Thy soul, whenever we use the terminologies thy or any such terminology, these are the archaic words. So what are archaic words? Most of the children, they keep on asking me. Archaic words are the words that were used earlier in literature, earlier in English language. We talk about language as a if we talk about language, then these were there were several words that were used in language, and now they are no longer in use, but they were relevant, and they had a lot of importance at that particular time when they were used by the writers. So, all right. So, uh, it employs unusual images taken from different fields of knowledge. So it employs unusual images. So there are unusual images. It's not that something usual is there. There will be unusual images, right? Uh, Taken from different fields of knowledge, and it could be taken from different fields of knowledge, right? It could be history, it could be geography, it could be astronomy, it could be alchemy, it could be mathematics, so on and so forth, right? So it's not that, for instance, I have this background of beach, right? Beautiful beach. I love nature. So I have taken this background. I've made this background as my background because I get that feeling that as I I'm in amidst nature. I love nature. I'm a nature lover. So, but this is one image, right? This is a usual image. What metaphysical poets used to do is that they used to take unusual images, right? And those unusual images could be from the field of geography. They take it from geography and then they combine it with history, or they combine it with astronomy, or they combine it with alchemy, or they combine it with mathematics. So these fields are entirely different, if we talk about mathematics, it has nothing literally to do. I hate maths. It has nothing to do with history. It has nothing to do with astronomy. I have interest in astronomy too. It has nothing to do in alchemy. It has nothing to do in geography. I love geography. This is what I'm just telling you, what I like, but it has nothing to do. So I'm just telling you that these fields have nothing to do with each other, but they used to take pictures, they used to take images that were unusual in nature and that belong to different fields altogether. Then it has a dramatic quality to it and often has an abrupt aggressive opening, right? So it has a dramatic quality, right? So whenever we are talking about metaphysical poetry, it has a dramatic quality, as we have already dealt with dramas. So it has a dramatic quality in it, and often has an abrupt aggressive opening. Sometimes it has aggressive opening, right? It frequently makes use of paradox. Now, it frequently makes use of, I mean, there is a lot of paradox that has been used in the poems. For instance, in his poem, Batter My Heart, the speaker appeals to God, right? Batter my heart. Earlier, we discussed valediction, right? Uh, a valediction forbidding mourning, right? Now we are discussing batter my heart. The speaker appeals to God. So batter my heart, the speaker appeals to God, right? Take me to you, imprison me, for I accept your enthrall me. Take me to you, imprison me, for I accept you, enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. I'll repeat, take me to you, imprison me, for I accept you, enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. Now, the elevation of metaphysical poets owes a great deal, it owes a great deal to H.C. Brisson's introduction to metaphysical lyrics and poems of the 17th century, which were published in 1912. After this, the reputation of metaphysical soared as a result of T.S. Eliot's path-breaking critical essay, The Metaphysical Poets. So T.S. Eliot is now another writer that we get to see. And when we talk about T.S. Eliot, he has also written an essay, right? And what is the name of that essay? It's a critical essay, The Metaphysical Poets. Very easy to learn, right? According to him, metaphysical poets like Donne fused thought and emotion. So according to him, metaphysical poets like Donne. So we are taking the example of Donne, had fused thought and emotion into the poetry. So it's when you are obviously when you're reading poetry or you're writing poetry, it depends whether you're a reader or you are a writer, right? So if I am a reader, I can see that in Donne's poems, there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of emotion that he has tried to convey through his poem, right? So there's a lot of thought that has gone into making that uh, poetry, into making and composing that beautiful piece of art, right? One finds an association of sensibility. So one finds an association of sensibility, very important. Keep that in mind. Again, I'm telling you, it's very important. Keep that in mind. So one finds an association of sensibility in their poetry, which later changed to a dissociation of sensibility in the Victorian poets. Now we come on to the Victorian poets, right? Now, what are we talking about? Just try to understand, right? See, one finds an association sensibility in their poetry, right? So we find this sensibility, association of sensibility, right? In their poetry, which later changed to, which when we talk about the later aspect, the later period, it changed, right? Everything changes, nothing is constant in this world. Remember that. Everything is gonna change. Everything is going to change, right? So if we take the example of not taking the example, I'm just telling you what about that how it changed to disassociation of sensibility in the Victorian poets. So when Victorian poets came in to the picture, they brought their disassociate okay, disassociation of poetry. So instead of association of poetry, they were inclined towards disassociation of poetry, right? So comparing Donne with the Victorian poets Tennyson and Browning. So who were the Victorian poets? You should know that. Now I'm telling you, please keep that in mind. Tennyson and Browning were the Victorian poets. Clear? Mind के अंदर बिठा लो, right? So Tennyson and Browning are poets and they think, but they do not feed their thought as immediately as the odor of a rose. So this is what Eliot says. This is not what has been said by everyone, like masses. But when we talk about Eliot, we are talking about T.S. Eliot over here, right? So let me explain you. So comparing Donne with the Victorian poets, when we compare Donne with the Victorian poets, who? Browning and Tennyson, right? Tennyson and Browning. Eliot is stating over here, Tennyson and Browning are poets and they think, right? So they are poets and they think. Clear? obviously poets are going to think, right? That's why they are going to write their poetry. So we are, you know, uh, everyone is a thinker according to me. I'm a I think too much. I think too much. That's a thing to be noted. That shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be a pure philosopher. You tend to think too much. I tend to think a lot. So Eliot states Tennyson and Browning are poets, and they think, but they do not feel their thought as immediately as the odor of a rose. How can you just imagine? Can you visualize like an odor of a rose, right? So this is so I love it. The the lines, I love it. So one finds an associate. This we have done. Okay. So thought to done was an experience. It modified his sensibility. So a thought to done, when we are talking about thoughts of done, we are talking about that how it uh, uh, basically acted as an experience, and it modified his sensibility. So a thought to a thought to done was an experience, and it modified his sensibility, right? So thought to done was an experience. Obviously, when you think something, it's a sort of an experience that you're experiencing, right? It's a moment that you're experiencing, right? So some of the important metaphysical poets are John Donne, George Herbert. John Donne, the sound you can see George Herbert, so you can remember John Donne, George Herbert, Richard Crashaw, Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell. Andrew Marvell, Richard Richard Crashaw, Richard Crashaw, Henry Vaughan, Henry Vaughan. Then who was it? George. Okay, George Herbert. George. Yeah. All right. So I think that for today, for this lecture, that's it. So we'll meet in the next lecture. Till then, let's all keep growing. Let's all keep evolving. Let's all keep learning. Bye bye.